On the day, Rachel's brother put his hand flat on the table in front of me and told me to be reasonable and think about the bigger picture. I had already been thinking about it for 3 weeks. He just didn't know what that looked like yet. But he would. They all would. My name is James Calloway. I didn't go looking for the truth. The truth found me. Let me back up. On a Thursday morning in mid-October, Rachel had left her old tablet charging on the kitchen counter the night before. Said I needed to transfer some photos to it. I came into the kitchen at 6:45 a.m., poured my coffee, sat down at the counter. The tablet was just sitting there. No real reason I touched the screen. Just one of those half-awake morning habits. The way you reach for whatever is nearest when your mind is still catching up. The screen lit up, no lock code. And the cloud sync had completed itself fully overnight. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't suspicious. I just touched a screen and my entire life changed in the next 4 minutes. Welcome to Dad's Cold Justice. Get comfortable because this one is going to take you somewhere. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. Trust me, you want to be here for this. The messages opened one by one. I read the first, then the second. Then I stopped counting 10 months ago. I had been deep in contract work in Atlanta, flying back and forth every couple of weeks, sometimes staying for 10 days, at a stretch trying to get Merrick Solutions' southern office operational. It was the most ambitious project Ray and I had ever committed to as partners. I was the one down there grinding. Ray stayed in Portland, running the home operation, keeping everything stable, or so I believed, while I was in Atlanta doing the actual work, building something real for both of us. They were in Portland building something else entirely. 10 months of messages between my wife and the man I trusted above everyone. A man I had built something genuine with. A man who had delivered a speech at our wedding and literally tore up with emotion. Actually tore up because he said, and I quote, "James, I have never in my entire life seen two people who make more sense together than you two." That man, I sat at that kitchen counter for an hour and 15 minutes without moving. My coffee went completely cold. I didn't notice, I didn't move. I just read every word, every lie. Every week, I was in Atlanta working at job paying, a mortgage planning anniversary surprises, while my wife and my business partner built an entire private world and decided to call it love at 7:15 a.m. I heard Rachel's alarm go off upstairs, her feet on the hardwood water running in the bathroom. The familiar morning rhythm of 5 years of shared mornings. Here she comes, I thought. Don't shift, don't breathe differently. Don't let her see one thing on your face. She came. Downstairs, James, you haven't left yet. I looked up at my wife. The woman I had loved without hesitation, without reservation, without a shadow of doubt for 5 years. The woman I had chosen completely and without question. Didn't sleep great, I said, just finishing my coffee. She moved toward the coffee maker. You want me to make a fresh one? She looked at me, the direction date. Way she always did in the mornings. Unhurried, easy, completely unbothered. What are you thinking for dinner tonight? Whatever you feel like, I said. She smiled. I smiled back. That was the last ordinary conversation we ever had. She just didn't know it yet. I want to be honest about the weeks that followed because I think people picture a man in my situation, either erupting on the spot or dissolving completely. Dishes get smashed. There's yelling in the front yard at 2 in the morning. Somebody's belongings end up on the porch in the rain. That is not what happened. What happened was quieter, and in a lot of ways much harder. What I felt wasn't fury. It was grief. That slow, hollow, bone-deep grief of losing someone who is still standing right there in front of you, still cooking in your kitchen, still sleeping on her side of the bed, still asking what you feel like eating like. Not a single thing in the world is wrong. Every morning I watched Rachel make breakfast and thought, this woman looked straight at me through a laptop screen every single night I was in Atlanta, and never so much as hesitated. Every evening when she kissed my cheek, I thought she probably texted him the blank, like probably of length. Second, I walked to my car. I gave myself 20 minutes. Every night after Rachel fell asleep, I would go sit in my truck, my 2020 Tacoma, which is honestly the most consistently solid choice I made through this entire stretch of my tuple life. Parked right there in my own driveway. Engine off, lights off. Just me in the dark and 20 minutes to feel everything I couldn't allow myself to feel inside that house. The betrayal, the humiliation, The very specific and precise pain of understanding that while I was giving up comfort and time and presence to build something for our future, they were using every absence I created as a window of opportunity. 20 minutes timer on my phone, then back inside because I had a great deal of work left too. How do 3 weeks of quiet, 3 weeks of ordinary mornings and ordinary dinners and ordinary evenings, while I moved like a man operating from a plan that no one near me could detect. Then, October 27th came. A Saturday evening, the Blazers game was on. I had been looking forward to it since Tuesday, and then the television went off. James, I need to talk to you. I know I thought I've known for 3 weeks, but go on, take whatever time you need. The Blazers will play again on Wednesday. What I said out loud was, okay. She was already crying before the first sentence, which told me precisely how she had scripted this conversation, and precisely what emotional response she had designed it to produce. I made a mistake, she said. A terrible one, and I am so sorry, and I need you to hear everything before you respond. Okay, I said. She told me about the involvement with Ray. She described it as a moment of weakness that escalated out of her control. 10 months is not a moment. A moment is burning toast. A moment is forgetting someone's name at a party. 10 months is a deliberate, daily, fully conscious decision repeated again and again and again by two adults who knew exactly what they were choosing and kept choosing it. But I let her continue. Then she told me she was pregnant by Ray. 3 months. She said it carefully, quietly. There it is, I thought. That is the actual reason this conversation is happening tonight. Not remorse. Not her conscience. The due date made it unavoidable. I understand this is devastating, she said, voice fracturing. And I know I have absolutely no right to ask anything of you. But this child is innocent in all of this, and I need you to. How long have you known? I asked. She hesitated. What about the pregnancy? How long have you known? A pause. Long enough for me to know she had hoped I wouldn't land on that exact question. About 7 weeks, she said quietly. 7 weeks. She had known for 7 weeks. Sat across from me at the dinner table for 7 weeks, said good morning for 7 weeks, video called me in Atlanta for 7 weeks, with that same completely easy expression, and asked how the project was going. Knowing I nodded slowly, I let the silence settle between us for a long moment. Okay, I said, finally I need some time with this, James. I'm not raising my voice, I just need time to think. She cried harder. I could tell she misread my calm as the start of some kind of forgiveness. She was not close to right. 5 days later, her entire family arrived. All of them Diane, her mother Marcus, her brother, cousin Wanda, who was not officially invited, but who has never once in her life failed to appear at a family emergency and had no plans to begin. Now they came in through my front door and positioned themselves in my living room like a committee that had reached its verdict without reviewing the evidence. Diane sat across from me with her hands folded carefully in her lap. James, you are such a genuinely decent man. This is an incredibly painful situation for everyone. But the child is completely without fault in any of this. I agree. Completely, I said. She blinked. She had clearly anticipated more resistance and deserves stability right now. She went on, carefully recalibrating. We just hope you can find it in yourself too. Diane, I said her name gently, warmly, like I was addressing someone I had real affection for, which 5 years in, I genuinely did. I hear every word you're saying. I just need a little more time to determine what kind of man I want to be. In this moment, she reached across and touched my arm. That's truly all we're asking, honey. That's all. Marcus was a different register. He had played defensive end in college, a man who had spent his entire life relying on a strong presence and absolute certainty about how rooms were supposed to go. Arms folded, jaw forward, like he had already determined the ending of this conversation before his feet crossed my threshold. He looked at me the way men look at someone whose response they've already decided doesn't matter. Listen, he said. I'm not going to dress this up. You stay. You do what needs doing. You become the bigger person. You become someone people admire. He paused deliberately. But if you walk out, you're just another man who folded. Under pressure, who turned his back when things stopped being easy. And that is what people remember about you. He delivered it like he was extending a hand, like his arrival alone had resolved the entire situation. I looked at him, then at Diane, then at cousin Wanda, who had settled herself onto my couch with a bowl of my mixed nuts. Zero invitation, zero acknowledgement. She had also claimed my TV remote and looked genuinely settled, like she had been coming here for years. I'd known this woman for 5 years. And she still called me Jeff, at least once every time we were in the same room. But sure, Wanda, get comfortable. Those are good nuts. I took a slow breath and turned back to Marcus. You know what, Marcus? I said quietly. Completely right. I do need to think very carefully about what kind of man I want to be. He nodded, satisfied shoulders easing back like a man who had successfully completed what he came to do. The room exhaled. Diane's face softened. Even Cousin Wanda paused, her chewing out of basic respect. And right there in my own living room with Rachel's family arranged in front of me looking satisfied and proud of their own performance, I want to tell you exactly what none of them knew. Not Diane with her carefully folded hands. Not Marcus with his defensive end certainty. Not Cousin Wanda with her nut bowl fingers on my television remote. None of them knew that I had already sat across from Catherine Wells, the sharpest family law attorney in Portland, once, but 3 times. That the divorce filing was not merely prepared but complete. That sitting in my home office upstairs was a clearly labeled folder containing 19 documented instances of business account misuse that would cause any judge in Oregon to lean forward in their chair. None of them knew that the man sitting across from them, measured, composed, quietly agreeable, had already made every decision that mattered. They believed they were speaking to a man at a turning point. They were speaking to a man who had already signed everything that needed signing, and was simply waiting for the precise moment to let them understand that. That moment was absolutely coming, and every single one of them would feel it. If you have been with me for a while, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. Hit the like button and leave your thoughts in the comments. Let me bring you back to those 3 weeks of quiet between October 15th and October 27th, because while Rachel was going through her normal mornings, and Marcus was mentally rehearsing his defensive end speech, and Cousin Wanda was probably already deciding which of my snacks she intended to consume without asking, I was occupied very quietly, very deliberately, and very completely. Day 2 after the discovery, I called Catherine, Wells' family law attorney. She carries the manner of a woman who has been told every lie a marriage can generate and ran out of surprise for any of them several years ago. I sat across her desk and laid out everything. She didn't react, didn't soften, didn't produce a box of tissues or offer a sympathetic tilt of the head. She simply picked up a pen and opened a fresh legal pad. How long since you found them? 2 days. Have you said anything to her? No. She looked up over her glasses. Have you told anyone? No. She asked direct questions. I answered. She set the pen flat on the pad. Stop documenting your feelings and start documenting your evidence. I respected her immediately. She explained the situation. Oregon divides marital property equitably, not automatically down the middle. She told me to assemble 5 years of financial records, every bank statement, every investment account, every piece of real estate documentation. Then she leaned forward and said, and if there is a business involved, I need the complete picture. Every contract, every expenditure, every clause, every agreement you have ever signed. She had no way of knowing yet, but that was the sentence that actually changed everything. The divorce itself was just the initial move. The real matter was the business. Ray and I had built Merrick Solutions from scratch. 2 independent consultants who had reached the limit of working for other organizations pooled resources in 2018, took on office space and built tap to type blank, something genuinely worth taking pride in: a solid client base, real revenue, a southern expansion that was outperforming its projections. I built that. We both built it. But I maintained the financials I ran, and the accounts I understood, every contract, every clause, every dollar that passed through that business. So when I began reviewing years of company records with the calm, unhurried focus of a man who has absolutely nothing left to protect, started finding things. Expense submissions on the business account. Nothing dramatic individually, 160 here, 210 there, but regular monthly 10 months, without exception. Everyone categorized under partner, travel, and client liaison. I pulled the internal calendar. Every single entry corresponded to a day Ray had blocked as external meeting and site visit. We had no project requiring that frequency of site visits. Oh, Ray, I thought. You put it on our account, our shared account, while I was in Atlanta, building our company's future. You were submitting. I'm your hotel stays as business expenses. I printed every record, organized it chronologically into a labeled folder with color-coded dividers, as though I were compiling a quarterly financial review. For an auditor, I labeled it travel expense reconciliation because that felt more precise and more quietly accurate than what it actually was. Proof 19. Documented instances. All on company time. All on company money. All documented now. 2. From years prior, when Ray and I established Merrick Solutions, we had worked with a contracts attorney named Patricia. Patricia was meticulous. Patricia was painstaking. Patricia was, with the clarity of hindsight, the unrecognized architect of everything that followed, and deserves an exceptional dinner because buried in Section 11 subsection D of our partnership agreement, a document we had both executed and probably hadn't examined carefully since 2018, was a clause Patricia had specifically insisted on including. Should either partner be found to have applied company funds, resources, or time to personal conduct, constituting a breach of fiduciary responsibility or professional obligation, the non-offending partner holds the right to initiate immediate dissolution of the partnership and assume controlling rights over intellectual property, client agreements, and operating assets. Catherine set her glasses down completely on the desk. James, the business account submissions alone establish improper use of company funds, combined with the internal calendar entries. 19 documented instances, I said. She looked at me steadily from across the desk. You have been thorough, she said. I smiled. I delivered Ray the dissolution notice on a Monday morning in November, certified mail to the office address and to his home address at the same time. Catherine sent the formal legal communication simultaneously. So there was no interval, not even a brief one, for misunderstanding, delay, or a call that might allow him to prepare a response. I didn't phone him, didn't message him, didn't offer him the courtesy of a direct exchange or a moment to compose a reply. No confrontation, no performance, no closing conversation in which he explains his position and I have to sit there and receive it. Just a legal document, precise, airtight, and precisely targeted, arriving in his mailbox on a plain Monday morning, the way a structural collapse arrives without warning. Ray contacted me 6 times that day. I watched the screen each time. Didn't take a single call. His 6th attempt was a text. James, come on, brother. We can work this out. Don't end everything we've built over something like this. Everything we've built over something like this. Read it twice. Set the phone face down on my desk, went back to what I had been doing. That was the last message from Ray I ever acknowledged. Not because I lacked words, not because I was overwhelmed by emotion, but because there are people whose choices remove their right to your response. Under the Residade dissolution terms, I walked away with all the intellectual property, every methodology, every system, every deliverable template Merrick Solutions had ever developed. I received the core client portfolio, representing approximately 72% of annual revenue. I kept the office lease. I retained Sophie, my lead project coordinator, who had reached out 2 days after the notice went out and said simply, "Tell me you're starting something new." And Kevin, our senior analyst, both of whom had been watching from their positions and made their decision the moment I called. Both said yes before I had completed the question, what did Ray keep? The company name, Merrick Solutions, the registered trademark, the LinkedIn page, with under 500 connections, and a vision statement that belonged to a business that no longer functioned. I hope sincerely that it was worth the calculation, Ray. I genuinely mean that. Now the family. This is where people tend to picture the story wrong. They expect the explosive group confrontation, the mass family message chain, a holiday dinner where something gets said that can't be unsaid and someone films 12 seconds of it that ends up shared around the prizes internet. That is not what I did. What I did was quieter and considerably more lasting. I contacted Rachel's family members individually, not as a group, one at a time. Across 3 weeks, I asked each of them to meet me separately for coffee, just to walk through some information before the legal process became a matter of public record, and they received it through other channels. Everyone agreed Diane first. We met at a coffee place on Northwest 23rd on a Wednesday morning. I arrived first. Ordered for both of us. Set the folder on the table before she sat down. I slid it across without speaking and let her go through it. She read, without a word, for nearly 5 minutes, then raised her eyes slowly. What am I looking at? Marked the relevant entries. She looked back at the pages. This entry here, I said, turning one gently. That weekend, Rachel told you she was staying with an old friend from college in Eugene. You sent her a message that Saturday checking she'd gotten in safely. You remember? Diane looked at the page. She was in a hotel in Beaverton, I said, with Ray silence. And this one? I turned another page. In February, Rachel came to you for $600, said it was for a car issue. Diane's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. The charge is a men's watch. From a jewelry boutique downtown, not one I received. She looked up. I closed the folder and moved it back across the table. I'm not sharing this to wound you, Diane, and I'm not placing this in front of you to set you against your own daughter. She will always be your daughter, and nothing changes that. But you sat in my living room and asked me to accept this situation. I paused. I felt you should understand the full situation you were asking me. To accept Marcus was a harder conversation. He wanted to make it a debate, which was honestly entirely consistent with who he is. Look, I'm not defending what Rachel did, fair, I said, but people do things under pressure that don't represent who they are, and Marcus, I placed the folder on the table between us. I'm not here to debate anything. I'm here to give you the complete picture. What you do with it is entirely up to you. He opened it, got 4 pages in, and went still. He stared at a page, and something behind his eyes shifted noticeably. You told me, I said calmly, that if I walked away I'd just be a man who couldn't manage pressure, who gave up when things became difficult. I leaned forward slightly. I'd like you to look at that folder, Marcus, and tell me who actually gave up on this family. He had nothing to say. I picked up my coffee. I'm not looking for an apology. I just needed you to be working from the accurate version. He left without saying much. Cousin Wanda received a phone call because I was not arranging a third coffee for a woman who helped herself to my mixed nuts without being invited and addressed me by the wrong name for 5 years. I laid out the situation directly and concisely. She made sounds of genuine shock at the placeling. Right intervals, said Lord above, 4 times in under 7 minutes. It was genuinely the most efficient exchange I had ever had with her. After that I withdrew entirely and let the truth do what truth consistently does when it reaches people who had been making decisions with incomplete information. Within 2.5 weeks, Rachel had stopped reaching out to me and had started calling her mother instead, repeatedly, urgently, from what I pieced together. The support she had relied on had become a room full of people asking questions she couldn't resolve and presenting her with documents she couldn't reframe. The account she had carefully maintained for 10 months was unraveling from its own foundation. And I was not present for any of it, not in the building, not in this conversation, not even in the neighborhood. The divorce was completed. I called Catherine and thanked her. You were an excellent client, James, she said, prepared, methodical, clear. Then a small pause. I hope we never speak professionally again, she added. God willing, I said. She gave a single quiet laugh. It was the first time I had heard her laugh across all our meetings. It suited her better than I would have guessed. I launched Callaway Consulting, my name on the front. Simple, direct, no partner, no divided authority, no expense account for anyone else to redirect. Just my name and a client base. I had earned one relationship at a time across 7 years of showing up, doing excellent work, and answering when people called. I opened with 7 of Merrick's former clients who came without hesitation, without negotiation, without a single meeting to discuss terms because their trust had never been in a company name. It had been in me, the consultant who remembered their timelines, who worked weekends when their Proust deadlines required it, who once rescheduled a personal commitment to revise a deliverable that needed same-day work. 4 of those 7 sent direct referrals within the first 45 days I brought on 5 people. To begin, Sophie joined first. She had sent me 3 words 2 days after the dissolution. Tell me the plan. Kevin followed. 2 additional analysts, and within 90 days we carried 13 active engagements. Ray and Rachel were together. I know this not because I watched, or tracked, or directed any attention toward it. I had entirely better uses for my time. What filtered back to me through people who no longer felt any reason to manage the information was the deeply predictable reality of 2 people who had constructed an entire connection on the energy of concealment, discovering that the energy is completely inseparable from the concealment. When you eliminate the unauthorized time together and the shared thrill of operating outside the rules, and the mutual reinforcement of Believing you are getting away with something, what remains is just two people at the kitchen table in the morning who understand precisely what the other person is capable of and have to face that understanding every single day. They had a daughter. Named her Claire. Claire carries no portion of responsibility for any part of this. I want to be completely clear about that. Whatever her parents decided, that child was not consulted on any of it. I hope she has a genuinely good life, I mean that, without reservation, and without anything hidden in the sentiment. Diane called me on a Thursday evening in December. I was in my kitchen making risotto from actual scratch, because apparently something that happens on the other side of a marriage ending this way is that you begin cooking things properly on weeknights, and you elect to call it growth rather than look at it too carefully. I almost let it ring James Diane. A long pause, the kind that takes something real to move through. I owe you something. You don't have to do this. No, I do. She was firm about that. I came into your home and asked you to accept a situation I hadn't fully examined. I built a strong position based on incomplete information, and you were entitled to better than that from me. I shared what I shared because you deserve to have the full picture, I said eventually. Not to cause harm, not to redirect anyone's loyalty, simply because you deserve to understand what you were actually asking me to live with. I know, she said. I understand that now. How are you holding up? Diane let out a long, slow breath, like something she had been holding for months. We spoke for a while after that. Nothing. Overwhelming. She asked about the business. I asked about her sister cousin Wanda. When we ended the call, I remained in my quiet kitchen for a moment. I don't hold anything against Rachel. What she did was genuinely painful. But carrying that indefinitely, that belongs to her. Now I set mine down, long time ago, somewhere between the driveway and the 20-minute timer. And that first morning in my own place, when I realized the silence around me didn't feel like a loss anymore, it just felt like it was mine, I went back to the risotto. Here is what I want you to carry with you. Rachel's family came to my home and told me to accept what happened and find a way forward. They were not entirely off base. Acceptance is not the same as absorbing something as permanent. Moving forward is not the same as doing nothing. And sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is refuse to participate in his own diminishment, refuse to raise his voice, refuse to collapse, refuse to become the version of himself that makes it easier for other people to dismiss what happened to him. You get still and you get to work. Rachel started a new chapter. Mike received every consequence that his own decisions built one business account submission at a time. Marcus received a lesson in the accuracy of assumptions that he had made about a man he hadn't fully looked at. Diane received the truth. She was owed, and I got my life back. Built it into something better than what existed before. Better than what any of them believed was possible. Better, honestly, than anything I had pictured for myself during those 20-minute nights sitting alone in my truck in my own driveway. If this story stayed with you, hit that like button and subscribe. More real, unfiltered, and honest stories right here on Dad's Cold Justice. I will see you on the next one.